My dear Russian students, what you're about to see is 1 hour of a conference that I did in Brussels, Belgium in 2020. It's a conference about design thinking, how it can be used, and where it came from, why it's so important in product development and innovation. And you're going to see a case study of how IDEO, the company that popularized design thinking, first applied it to design very simple products. As you know, design thinking nowadays is used not just to design products, but services, processes, and even business models. So it's a pleasure to share this conference with you, and I hope you find some interesting insights in this 1 hour conference. Hope to see you soon.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marcos Lima. I'm Brazilian, but I've been living in France for the last 12 years. Anybody here comes from Latin America? All right. Anybody from Brazil? No. Okay, but Latin America is close enough. So I lived in the U.S. I've lived in Austria. I've worked for companies like Bosch. My main focus before I became an academic was science, technology, and innovation. I was the head of a technology park project, very similar to the one you have here. You are in a research park area. We were trying to do something similar in Brazil, and I was the head of that project for 4 years. My first job in France was with an IT company called Amadeus in Sophia Antipolis, which is a technology park in the south of France. And I've been director of the International Marketing and Business Development Program at Skema Lille for the past 2 years. My research interests include innovation, marketing, and knowledge management. So let's talk about design thinking. So I understand that you guys have seen this image before. Would anybody here share with us what their understanding is of design thinking? Who could share with us how they would define design thinking? Nobody is brave enough to speak up? May I ask of you what you think design thinking is? What is your name? Anarchist. When you hear design thinking, anarchist, what do you think of? Yes. Okay. All right. We're going to see that originally design thinking was indeed focused on products design. Nowadays, it's a series of principles that can be used pretty much to come up with any type of innovation, whether it's product innovation, whether it's service innovation. So fashion is at the same time a product, and it can have service tied to it, but it can also be a business model innovation. It's something that can be used for a number of different domains. And basically, it started with this. Well, it did not really start with this guy, but this guy is the one who popularized the concept of design thinking. He's the founder of a company called IDEO. And we're going to do a case study, a video case study of how IDEO spread design thinking through the world. Just to give you a clue of who this guy is, David Kelley presented Steve Jobs to his wife. And he developed the first computer mouse for Apple in the 1980s. So he goes a long way back in the Silicon Valley. He is considered one of the fathers of design thinking. He is the founder of IDEO. And basically, he comes from a design background, and he realized that a lot of companies got product development wrong. They got product development wrong because they started straight to the solution they believed that customers wanted. And this guy argued that that's crazy. You cannot know, an engineer cannot know what a housewife or a taxi driver or a teacher can expect of a product. The job of the designer is to empathize with the customer. Does anybody here know where the word empathize comes from? What is pathos? Anybody here speak Greek? What does patho means? Pathology, passion, sympathy, empathy, emotion, suffering, feeling. It's understanding. Empathy is understanding the other's suffering, understanding the pain in someone else's. So the very first phase of design thinking is to feel the pain of the customer. Then there are several aspects of this pain that you can work with in your project. You cannot solve all the problems. You have to define among the several possibilities of solutions which are the most important. That's the definition phase. Then you ideate solutions to that stage. Then you create a prototype. Everybody understands what a prototype is? It's a preliminary concept that is not complete, that is fast to come up with, that will do the same job as the final product. And then you test that prototype. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see IDEO doing this, applying this framework to improving something that you're all familiar with, a shopping cart. Before we do that, let's try to understand a little bit better why design thinking is so important in our days. Look at this graphic. It's an estimate of how many products fail. And the top performers get it right 62% of the time, which means that 38% of the time they get it wrong. The middle performers get it right one time over two, right? Once in 50% of the time. And the bottom performers fail 55% of the time. Can you imagine how much energy, how much effort, how much money is wasted in failed products? Products that nobody wants? And the questions that design thinkers ask is, why so many products fail? And this cartoon may give you an idea of why that happens. You have a salesperson. A salesperson has, among other jobs, the job of empathizing, understanding what customers want, and bringing what they think customers want back to the company. Often, salespeople get it wrong, and they describe the job to be done as this. Then the drawing office gets even wronger and draws this. Then the production engineering sees it this way, because they know that it's stupid to have three strings, right? Because two ropes are more than enough. These stupid drawing office people, 3 ropes. And then the works say, oh, these stupid engineers, they got the size of the rope wrong. We know that the ropes have to have the same size. And then the after-sales service engineers say, oh, these people, don't they see that this won't swing? And this is what customers thought they had requested. Right? So much can go wrong in companies because people are divided in silos. They are in vertical structures that don't talk to each other, that don't understand, that lose contact with the customer, that lose the ability to empathize, to feel the customer's pain. So let us see a short video that is a synthesis of a book called Where Good Ideas Come From. And several of the principles of design thinking and the creativity of design thinking will be embedded in this short video.
For the past 5 years, I've been investigating this question of where good ideas come from. It's the kind of problem I think all of us are intrinsically interested in. We want to be more creative, we want to come up with better ideas, we want our organizations to be more innovative. I've looked at this problem from an environmental perspective. What are the spaces that have historically led to unusual rates of creativity and innovation? And what I've found in all of these systems, there are these recurring patterns that you see again and again that are crucial to creating environments that are unusually innovative. One pattern I call the slow hunch, that breakthrough ideas almost never come in a moment of great insight, in a sudden stroke of inspiration. Most important ideas take a long time to evolve, and they...
Anybody remembers who this guy is? Very good. You know your history. Archimedes, who discovered the principle of the displacement of water proportional to the volume in the water when he was having a bath, and he cried out, "Eureka, Eureka!" and he walked down naked in the streets of Syracuse. By the way, this is not how innovation usually happens. It's not a eureka moment, some genius that has as an insight. On the opposite, it's this slow hunch of people coming together and discussing ideas.
A long time dormant in the background. It isn't until the idea has had 2 or 3 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years to mature, that it suddenly becomes accessible to you and useful to you in a certain way. And this is partially because good ideas normally come from the collision between smaller hunches, so that they form something bigger than themselves. So you see a lot in the history of innovation, cases of someone who has half of an idea. There's a great story about the invention of the World Wide Web and Tim Berners-Lee. This is a project that Berners-Lee worked on for 10 years.
Are you familiar with the invention of the www? Tim Berners-Lee was working in a physics lab in Europe between France and Switzerland called CERN. And he needed to create a solution to his own problem of sharing documents, of sharing papers, of sharing texts. So he used a technology called hypertext that would link these things, but he had a very immature idea of how this could work. So he went to conferences, he talked to experts, he read about hyperlinks, and over 2, 3, 4 years, he came up with something called Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Does that sound familiar? HTTP. And in order to do HTTP, you would need a World Wide Web, and you would need a language called Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. And one of the most important cultural innovations of our age was created by this individual who during those 2-3 years was constantly sharing, learning, discussing his project. And notice that he did not patent this idea. He made it open for other people to play with, and therefore it became the standard.
He didn't have a full vision for this new medium he was going to invent. He started working on one project as a side project to help him organize his own data. He scrapped that after a couple years, and he started working on another thing. And only after about 10 years did the full vision of the World Wide Web come into being. That is, more often than not, how ideas happen. They need time to incubate, and they spend a lot of time in this partial hunch form. The other thing that's important when you think about ideas this way is that when ideas take form in this hunch state, they need to collide with other hunches. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And you have to figure out a way to create systems that allow those hunches to come together and turn into something bigger than the sum of their parts.
And that is what design thinking is all about. Design thinking is about putting together diverse people with diverse background, people who have lived different experiences, that have learned different approaches to solving problems, in the same room to look at this problem from different angles. One of the key elements of design thinking is the diversity of the people involved. In the ideal case, we're going to see that they will have a English major, with a biology major, with a philosopher, with an engineer, with a marketer, because each one of these people have different hunches. They have different biases, ways of looking at how to solve problems.
That's why, for instance, the coffee house in the age of the Enlightenment, or the Parisian salons of modernism, were such engines of creativity, because they created a space where ideas could mingle and swap.
So let's talk about this. Some people say that without the salons or the coffee houses, the Industrial Revolution would not have happened. Because these were places where people came and for a coffee, and an engineer would meet with a banker, who would meet with a patent office clerk, and they would all talk together, share ideas, and come up with the means for launching a steam engine or a new machine, right? So it was and up until then, if you went to a bar, you drank alcohol. Alcohol is has a numbing effect on your mind. Coffee, on the contrary, stimulates people. In my years as head of this innovation project, I visited several hundreds or dozens of research institutions, research places. One constant in all these places, they always have great eating facilities with a great kitchen corner, with a great coffee place where people will feel welcome to come and share what they know. They come for a coffee, and over that coffee, they share their projects, they share their ideas. So creating these spaces that facilitate sharing from people of different walks of life is what makes for the diversity of design thinking. So let us look at the traditional innovation process. This is traditionally how innovation happens, right? You have a concept, a design, a test, and a launch. And you have, on the one side, engineers who push their knowledge. They say, I know the best way to solve this problem, you have to do this. And they push that technological knowledge. And on the other hand, you have people like me, marketers, who pull knowledge from customers, who try to understand from customers what they want. Which one is more important, the engineer who knows the technology or the marketer who knows the customer? Some people said both. And I think you're right. I mean, one of the strengths of Steve Jobs is that he was a good marketer, but he spoke the language of the engineers. And he could be a very good, he could have at the same time technology push. For example, he didn't ask anybody if the iPhone would be an ideal phone. He understood from the technology of touchscreen that this would be a great innovation. But he also worked with people trying to understand user experience, trying to understand how to adapt that phone to people's needs. So here's the traditional stage gate decision process, right? You have a lot of ideas in the first stage. Some of these ideas become promising. Then you kill the ideas that are not very promising. And in the end, you end up with two very promising ideas, which you launch, and then you get 50% market success. What is wrong with this approach? What is wrong with this traditional approach of innovation? Who's making the decision to kill ideas here? Some guy behind a desk. And who said that this guy behind a desk knows whether that product has what it takes to be a success? I mean, if Mark Zuckerberg had come to me 12 years ago and asked if I wanted to put money into Facebook, I probably would have said, what? There's so many social media networks already. I mean, there's MySpace, there's Friendster, the Facebook? Why would I want to put money in another social network? If somebody tried to explain to me the concept of Twitter, the concept of Airbnb, if somebody tried to sell me participation in the Airbnb project, I would have said no. Who's going to trust the house, the key to your house, to a perfect stranger? So people like me would be killing the wrong ideas and throwing, or killing the right ideas rather, throwing the baby with the bathwater. Design thinking has a completely different approach. Instead of having some guy in a chair deciding what should be moved forward or not, they simply test ideas in the real world with real people. And by prototyping these ideas and empathizing these ideas. You're all familiar with Be Ready. I went to Turin in a conference where the chief marketing officer told us about the case of Be Ready. This is a good example of how traditional innovation can still work. Be Ready took 5 years to develop. They created 18 patents, and they knew that this was a good idea because they knew that creating a Nutella experience that people could eat anywhere would be a good thing. They took they made a big bet, and it paid off. It became a success. But it could have been a mistake. It could have been a failure because there was a bunch of Nutella engineers, Ferrero, who believed this was a good idea, but maybe people don't behave as they expect. And when, by the time they tested this product, like 3 years down the line, 20 patents down the line, it may be too late, right? So design thinking is about testing your ideas much sooner. Sometimes we design thinkers use experts who are called lead users, people who are so passionate about a problem that they create a solution to the problem before it is commercially available. For example, our friend, what's his name again? Tim Berners-Lee. This guy, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He was knighted for I mean, you are the digital native generation. You better know the name of the guy who created the environment that you're surfing right there. It's something I needed for work. www. Gatorade. Who created Gatorade? Pepsi? Coke? Somebody who needed Gatorade really badly. Who needs Gatorade? Athletes. Mountain biking. Who created the feminine a sports bra? A guy or a girl? A girl, because a guy does not know what it's like to run with heavy breasts I mean, it takes a girl to know what that's like, right? I mean, it takes a girl to understand, to feel that pain, to feel that need, right? So lead users are people who understand the problem better than anybody. They're experts, and they often have very good ideas on how to solve that problem. We're going to see that lead users are a key component of design thinking. So that brings us to the design thinking model. And that brings us to our case. So in the next half hour, we're going to take a trip to California. We're going to visit IDEO, one of the most innovative companies of all time. And we're going to learn from IDEO how they apply the design thinking method. And before we do so, I want to see how good you are with design, or at least at feeling the pain. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this object? I mean, I don't know in Belgium. In France, if you go to a supermarket, you can still find something very similar to this. They're starting to improve this object in the last 5-10 years. But we're going to see how IDEO is going to completely redesign this object. So let's see, if you are in the shoes of IDEO, how would you improve this object? As a shopper, can you feel any pain here? The wheels. Anybody who's had a case that turns 360 degrees instead of a regular case knows that a 360-degree wheel makes this thing much more maneuverable. Have you ever tried maneuvering this on a tight spot? It's like, it's completely unwieldy, right? It's a terrible experience. So maneuverability is one problem. Yes. The weight. This is made in metal, right? Even if it's a wireframe metal, it still has very heavy components here. So does it have to be this big? Does it have to be so heavy? What else? The size. I mean, the era of the hypermarket is almost over. I don't know if you know this, Carrefour, Auchan, all the big hypermarkets are in trouble because consumer behavior is shifting. People prefer now to shop in smaller surfaces. Do we still need this a huge shopping cart like this? Any other pains you can find? Yes? It's ugly. It's ugly. I mean, does beauty matter? I mean, Apple proved that beauty matters, that people prefer sensual, aesthetic, pleasing design, right? And this is simply awfully ugly. So maybe we can find a solution to that problem too. Anything else? Yes? Yeah. And that's a kind of a way of forcing people to put it back in its place, so that but maybe there's a better way. There's a better way of getting people to give back the card. All right. So we already have several pain points. We're going to see that some of these were used by IDEO, some of these were prioritized by IDEO, others weren't. Let's see a young David Kelly. This is 20 years ago, at the beginning of design thinking. By then, in this documentary, they don't even call it design thinking yet. But this is the best known film that documents how IDEO applies the design thinking process to create better user experiences. So let's take a dive.
9 in the morning, day one, and these people have a deadline to meet.
So welcome to the kickoff of the shopping cart project.
This is Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, and these are designers at IDEO, probably the most influential product development firm in the world. Designers are the reason TVs have square screens, chairs 4 legs, and toothbrushes nowadays those squishy handles. In fact, it was IDEO that designed those squishy handles. IDEO has designed everything from high-tech medical equipment to the 25-foot mechanical whale in the movie Free Willy, and the first computer mouse for Apple. Smith ski goggles, Nike sunglasses, NEC computer screens. Hundreds of products we take for granted.
This is called the Neat Squeeze toothpaste tube, which...
You invented that. The man who runs IDEO is Dave Kelly, a Stanford engineering professor with a Groucho Marx mustache, a dab of genius, and an approach to innovation that usually works.
Well, thank you, Fred.
But not always.
Thanks a lot. I can show you some products that failed. Came up with this idea called monster shoes, where you take these little monsters and lace them into your shoes, like this. And we built a bunch of them, and I didn't want those either. So.
Mostly what IDEO designs, though, does work, and it works very well. Dave and his design teams create about 90 new products every year.
The point is that we're not actually experts at any given area. You know, we're kind of experts on the process of how you design stuff. So we don't care if you give us a toothbrush, a toothpaste tube, a tractor, a space shuttle, you know, a chair. It's all the same to us. We want to figure out how to innovate by using our process, applying it.
And so for the next 5 days, the team will apply that process to bringing the supermarket shopping cart into the 21st century.
I think first we should maybe all acknowledge that it's kind of insane to do an entire project in a week.
Project leader is Peter Skillman, a 35-year-old Stanford engineer. Project leader because he's good with groups, not...
Okay, so let's see a couple of things that stand out from this video. The first few seconds of this video. First, what do you see when you look at IDEO's workshop, when you look at their place, what do you notice? Why?
Because they need to test the stuff they design.
Not only that, they also are going to need a lot of walls. They're going to paste a lot of stuff up there, photos, drawings, doodles, post-its. I mean, this is going to be a post-it storm. They're going to fill this whole thing with thousands of ideas, literally, right? So they need a lot of room to move about, and they need to be very reconfigurable, right? Here they have they are in a plenary format. Then they can split up and work in small groups, then regroup. It has to be very, very flexible. So that is the first thing we notice. Now, remember when we talked about diversity, how diverse people have to be in order to come up with creative solutions to a problem? Look at just how diverse the IDEO team is.
Seniority. He's only been at IDEO for 6 years. The rest of the team is eclectic, but that's typical here. Whitney Mortimer, Harvard MBA. Peter Coughlin, linguist. Tom Kelly, Dave's brother, marketing expert. Jane Fulton-Suri, psychologist. Alex Kazaks, 26, a biology major, who's turned down medical school 3 times because he's having too much fun at IDEO.
Kids climbing up and doing this.
Kids do that.
Safety emerges early as an important issue.
22,000 child injuries a year, which is, and so they're hospitalized injuries. I mean, there are many others.
So look at the first thing that you can learn about empathy. The first thing you learn about empathy, that is, it's not just people thinking, oh, okay, what could be the problem here? Do you think that child safety? I think child safety is a problem. They don't just think, they go deep into the data to look for statistics that confirm that that is a real problem. Who would have thought that 22,000 babies get hospitalized in the United States every year because of these shopping carts? That is a big, big unmet need. That is a great reason not to use these objects. You see, it's not just, oh, I think we can make them safer. No, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the origin of the problem. And child safety emerged as a big problem. 22,000 injuries every year. Imagine bleeding babies.
Reported in the store. That's you actually have to go to the
That's
emergency room.
hospitalized, right.
And theft. It turns out a lot of carts are stolen.
You know, what is the average life of a cart? Does it last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And how big is this theft thing?
10 a.m. As the team works, it becomes clear there are no titles here, no permanent assignments.
The other side says, gives us a lot of help, says, be safe.
Everyone appears to be equal, and they love to mock corporate America.
I'll give you status. I'll give you a big red ball on a post, and that says you're a big guy. If you got a ball, you're a senior vice president. You know, what do I care? The desk, the red ball, it's all the same. In a very innovative culture, you can't have a kind of hierarchy of here's the boss and the next person down, the next person down, the next person down, because it's impossible that the boss is the one who's had the insightful experience with shopping carts. It's just not possible.
According to Kelly, even employees who merely listen to the boss don't add that much either.
So you gotta hire people who don't listen to you, and that, I don't think corporate America wants to hear that right yet.
I think we ought to start making those lists about the kinds of questions that we're going to ask.
The team splits into groups to find out firsthand what the people who use, make, and repair shopping carts really think.
So now we see the key stage of empathizing, right? We see that at this stage here, it's one thing to brainstorm within the IDEO shop what they think the problems are. But they only can know so much from their sources, from their research. Who knows most about shopping carts, how they're used, how they're repaired? Who are the lead users? Who are the experts in shopping carts? Who would you talk to if you needed to talk to shopping carts, to understand problems with shopping cart? Moms? But moms use shopping carts like once a week. Are they really experts? Certain employees look at shopping carts every single day. Security employees, for example, who can best understand the problem of theft of carts that get stolen than the people who watch the cameras in the parking lot all day long, right? You know, anybody here heard of Ocean Drive or these drive-through supermarkets? When you get with your car to get your products in a bag, somebody spent a lot of time picking up your products and preparing them for you. These people shop all day long, not just once a week, all day long. They developed strategies for shopping that you and I never heard of because it's not a big problem for us. We don't feel the pain. They do because they do this all day long, every day. So now they're going to talk to these lead users. They're going to talk to these experts.
Go.
The problem with the plastic card is the wind catches it. Yeah. And these things have been clocked at 35 across the parking lot.
Oops. Look at this problem. Some of these shopping carts have been clocked at 25 miles an hour. Who would have known that the wind was a problem? Only people who surveil shopping carts all day long. 30 miles an hour is like 50 kilometers an hour. Can you imagine the impact of shopping carts nested together, caught by the wind, and boom, bumping into a car or a baby or a person at 50 miles an hour? 35 miles an hour. That's a big problem. That it's invisible for you and me. It takes talking to people who really feel the pain to understand that. Now, they're going to talk to the professional shoppers, people who shop all day long. Here's what they're going to find out.
Cart, except for the professional shopper, whose strategy is to leave the cart at various places.
3:30 in the afternoon.
This professional shopper does not shop like you and I. You and I, we go like this. We pick an item. We put an item there. The problem is, it's not very maneuverable. The professional shopper will leave the car in one spot, one strategic spot, will pick up a basket, will go to the alley, pick up all the elements they need, put it on the cart, and move on. They don't carry the shopping cart all throughout the alleys. Okay, so they gathered a lot of good ideas. They gathered a lot of problems. They come back and they have to now prioritize. They cannot solve all problems. They cannot tackle all of them. So they now pass to stage 2. They have empathized. They have understood the problem. Now they have to prioritize which problems they're going to solve.
Back at IDEO, there is no let-up.
Each team is going to demonstrate and communicate and share everything that they've learned today. People went off into the four corners of the earth and are coming back with the golden keys to the innovation.
We were in the store, 2 hours, and it was truly frightening just to see the kind of stuff going on.
You ought to designate some people to make damn.
Did you see all the pictures they took? Did you see the picture of the little boy, like, climbing on the back of the cart like this? I mean, he was asking for trouble, right? It's not just asking people, how would you improve this cart? It's actually observing. This is called ethnographic method. It's observing how people use the object. And they took hundreds and hundreds of photographs of how people use shopping carts.
That the store owner's point of view is represented.
After 9 straight hours, the team is tired. They call it a day.
So,
everybody cool?
Well, that's great. Thanks a lot. We had a great time today. I want to get together and start here.
Day 2 and the start of IDEO's unique brand of brainstorming. They call it a deep dive, a sort of total immersion in the problem at hand. IDEO's mantra for innovation is written everywhere. One conversation at a time. Stay focused. Encourage wild ideas. Defer judgment. build on the ideas of others.
That's the hardest thing for people to do, is to restrain themselves from criticizing an idea. So if anybody starts to nail an idea, they get the bell, you know.
The deep dive begins, and for the next few hours, the ideas pour out and are posted on the walls.
Oh, the blind, the privacy blind, like when you're buying 6 cases of condoms.
So now they are at stage 3, the ideation process. And have you noticed how they're ideating? Instead of talking hours and hours about possible solutions to the 4 problems they detect, they prioritize child safety, maneuverability, theft, how do you keep the cars from being stolen, and the wean problem. Instead of spending hours and hours talking about that, they doodle. To doodle is to draw rough sketches. They conceptualize their ideas with very elementary drawings that they paste on the wall. And you're going to see this wall is going to be covered with hundreds and hundreds of concepts and drawings. Quantity makes quality. It's not enough to have just 10 ideas. You need 100 ideas. And the ideas just pour in. There's 2 phases in design thinking. The first phase is the divergent phase, in which a lot of ideas are created. The walls are full of pictures, drawings, keywords. And then there is the convergent phase, in which they're going to narrow down to the most important ideas. Oops.
Nine in the
wild ideas, and they end up being better ideas than if you said, if everybody only came up with sane things, you know, kind of appropriate things, you'd never like have any points to take off to build a really innovative idea.
It's organized chaos.
Organized chaos. It's not organized. What it is it's focused chaos.
By 11 a.m., the group begins narrowing down the hundreds of ideas written or drawn on the walls. How? By voting for them.
Vote with your Post-it, not with an idea that's cool, but with an idea that's cool and buildable.
Do you see these small Post-its on the wall? These micro Post-its is a brilliant way of voting called the silent voting. Instead of debating, is it my idea that should prevail or someone else's idea, what they do is they give each person a certain number of Post-its, and they say, you have 10 Post-its, use them wisely. And you go, pakch, pakch. And if every person goes spending their budget of micro Post-its in just half an hour, walking around the room, if you have like 15 people doing that, when you look at the wall, you'll have the hot spots of the ideas that are the consensus of everybody. You'll have the spaces where there's most convergence. So it's a silent, non-political way of determining which ideas are the best. It's a very effective way of selecting the best ideas that are going to be prototyped, which is the next stage.
If it's too far out there and it can't be built in a day, then I don't think we should vote on it.
Why not have you be the judge? You're the boss.
Because I'm going to be wrong. It's the team that's able to really judge with the best ideas.
Otherwise, ideas wouldn't come out?
That's right. Enlightened trial and error succeeds over the planning of lone genius.
Enlightened trial and error succeeds over the planning of the lone genius. If anything sums up IDEO's approach, that is it. That and the focused chaos that seems to go with it.
I take a point of view, I call it the sport utility vehicle cart.
It is noon. Worried that the team is drifting, what can only be called a group of self-appointed adults under Dave Kelly holds an informal side session.
We don't want to tell them what to build, or else we take away the benefit of the whole thing, right?
What needs should they optimize their solution to?
Yes.
The purpose is to refocus the deep dive.
Maybe we arbitrarily say we can do 5 teams. 4 or 5 teams. 4 or 5 teams, and we give each team a need area. Hey.
So this is a very important stage right here. They diverged, now they're converging, and each team is going to focus just in one part of the problem. One team is going to focus on child safety. Another team is going to focus on maneuverability checkout. Another team is going to focus on the wind problem. Another team is going to focus on the theft problem. And each of them is going to prototype the best solution to that problem. What do you think they're going to do with each prototype for the separate problems in the end? What would you do if you had one prototype that is the best for child safety, one prototype that is the best for the theft problem? What do you do at the end? Sorry? Exactly. Is that what you're going to say? Exactly. So they take the best ideas, the best prototypes, and they try to create one single prototype that reflects the best ideas of the groups over the last few days. So that is the fourth stage, prototyping.
Grab everybody over to the wall here. There has to be a command decision. It becomes very autocratic for a very short period of time in defining what things people are going to work on.
Like it or not, the team is told it will split into groups to build mock-ups, covering 4 areas of concern that have been identified. Shopping, safety, checkout, and finding what you're looking for.
I noticed that toward the end of the process, the adults took over.
Yeah, that's because we have no choice but to stop that cycle. I mean, there's, if you don't work under time constraints, you could never get anything done because it's a messy process and go on forever.
While the team starts building prototypes, Dave Kelly takes me on a tour of the rest of IDEO.
What's happening in here is that's a client meeting. That's a first client meeting. That's the first time we met with the client. So we haven't trained them yet. If we took them straight from there into a room where music was blaring and everybody was throwing Nerf darts at each other, that would be a little hard to take. You know, so we're warming them up for a DC-3 wing. The man asked me. He didn't ask some process where you
on the shopping cart so that you as the customer, as you pull it off the shelf.
So that bit that I fasted forward had to do with IDEO's culture. It's a culture of playfulness. It's a culture of fun. People don't come to work because they're told to. They come to work because they want you. They want to feel great in an environment that's fun, that's friendly, that's social. So, but let's get back to the workshop and look at the prototypes and see how each one of the prototypes try to address the problems raised.
We'd scan each item.
One that's built around child safety, and another that lets shoppers talk to the supermarket staff remotely.
Yeah, where can I find the yogurt?
But the adults, again, decide more work needs to be done before the mock-ups can be combined into one last prototype.
Why don't we have all the carts come up here for a second?
I think you take a piece of each one of these ideas and kind of back it off a little bit and then put it in the design.
The design is still not there. But there's another motto at IDEO: fail often in order to succeed sooner. And some of the team will be up half the night trying to put together a design that finally does work. It is day 5, and Dave Kelly has no idea what the final cart looks like. Only the team does.
If they kind of got their heads down, they don't look at me, I'm nervous. You know, if they say, wait till you see it, then I know we're in good shape. So I'm getting wait until you see it. I think that'll be good.
There it is!
All right. If we Google IDEO shopping cart, we can see an image of the final product here. So this is what they developed in just 5 days. Does it look like they solved all the problems? Does it look like they solved the problem of child safety? Not only can you put 2 children here, not only do they have each like a small place where they can place a cup, there's no wires, there's no metal that can stick into the flesh of a young baby. Do you see these baskets? Remember the professional shopper? The professional shopper would stop this cart in a place, pick up the basket, take the basket to the place where they need to pick up items, put it back on, and move on. Well, they're using much lighter material, and the wheels turn 360 degrees. Now, if anybody here shopped in, I don't know if you have Truffaut in Belgium. In France, there is a gardening store that adopted a similar idea. And what you do is you do not check out the baskets. You leave the baskets behind the checkout spot, and there are hooks here can you see the hooks here? These hooks are for hanging the bags. You bag each item. These items are then put on these hooks, and you can roll all the way to your car, and you put the bags in your car. If there is no baskets here, will people steal this cart? Will people steal an empty frame? Of course not. The value is in the ability to transport contents. If it's an empty frame, you solve the problem of theft. And guess what? You also solve the problem of wind. So they also have other ideas that eventually were adopted. Now several supermarkets have the self-scanning option that you can scan when you get to checkout. You weigh how much you bought. So what is the final thing that they have to do? What is the final stage of design thinking? What? Yes? Yes. They're not sure that this will work, so they have to test it in the real world.
9 in the morning.
Oh, we're in good shape.
Cost about the same as today's carts is different in every other way. Hand baskets that stack in a metal frame, and major improvements for all.
What do you think?
Well, I'm very proud of the team. I think it's great.
Does this work for you?
Works for me great. Yeah. It's also beautiful. I mean, let's take it over to a local supermarket and see what they say.
Yeah, it works really well.
The cart's wheels turn 90 degrees so it can move sideways. No more lifting up the rear in a tight spot. And you shop in a totally different way. But the bags are hung on hooks on the cart's frame. Remember, there is no basket here.
Talk to me about theft.
There's no value in this cart without the basket because you can't carry anything in it. It's useless to anybody. You can't use it as a barbecue.
So it's not going to get stolen.
That's right.
So this ought to appeal to store owners then.
Yes.
I love it. I think it looks great.
At first, I was a little shocked, but I think you have some fantastic ideas here. It needs a little refining, but I think that it's great. I mean, we would want them.
It makes us feel great. And she also gave us some really good comments about how we can make this thing better.
Just wherever you are, look around. The only thing that's not designed by somebody is nature. So the trees are not designed by us, but everything you see, every light fitting, every flower vase, every scale, every stand for fruit, everything is designed, has to go through this kind of process.
Okay, so what should happen next? What will the IDEO people do now that they tested it? What is the next step? Exactly. Go back to the first stage and try to empathize with what has been said, then prioritize what has been said and try to solve only the most important problems about what has been said. So they will have to redo a design sprint to tackle these problems. So it's what we call an iterative process that will start over. Start over. So the takeaways we can get from design thinking from everyday life is the importance of diversity. Next time you find somebody disagreeing with you, instead of feeling hurt or intimidated or defensive about that disagreement, take that as a source of, a person who sees the problem differently can add to the problem, can add to the solution of the problem. Don't always look for like-minded people. Don't always look for people who think exactly like you do, because that tends to lead to a poorer problem solving. I think we learned by looking at IDEO's approach that creativity is not a flash of genius. It's not somebody who wakes up in a bathtub crying eureka. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of frameworks, structures that help you establish a method. And I think it was Thomas Edison that said that invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It takes a lot of hard work to come up with good ideas. And in order to come up with a few good ideas, you need hundreds of ideas. And I think we also saw what a fascinating field product development and innovation can be when we take unmet needs, the user's unmet needs at heart. That is my favorite definition of innovation, is understanding how can we make this product or this service better? What are the pain points? What are the problems with this? I mean, your children are going to be laughing at the way you went to school. They're going to be laughing at how inadequate this machine is. What, you had to type in 100 keys? You had to learn English? I mean, so try to imagine how you can contribute to making this world a better place. You don't have to be an engineer for that. You can design better experiences. You can design better processes. You can make things faster, cheaper. Take EasyJet, for example. The low-cost business model does not involve necessarily technology. It involves better, more efficient processes, right? Anybody here could have created Airbnb. Anybody here could come up with a better business model. Uber is not that technology intensive after all. It's a matchmaking app that anybody here could have hired a developer to do. There's a Parisian girl, a handicapped girl, who called an Uber one day and realized that Uber was not prepared to deal with her handicap. They didn't know how to pick her up. Their car was not adapted to her wheelchair. Do you know what she did? She created an Uber for handicapped people, and she's now in 3 different countries. So innovation is about understanding those unmet needs, the needs of groups of people who are overlooked, whose needs are not taken to heart in the existing solutions. Anybody here can create better solutions for tomorrow, and this framework can help you think about that. So thank you guys for coming. Hope to see you soon.